Hello. The big, beautiful bill passed the House in May and is now being rewritten in the Senate after several provisions failed Byrd rule review. Senate Republicans are aiming for a revised version by July 4th, but internal disagreements are causing delays. Next, the Senate must finalize and pass its version, likely through budget reconciliation. After that, both chambers will need to reconcile differences before the bill can go to the president for signature. This chart shows how a new government bill could affect the U.S. budget from 2025 to 2034. The biggest cost, about 3.8 trillion, comes from tax cuts. These include extending tax breaks from 2017, letting people skip taxes on tips, and raising limits on deductions. There's also 284 billion in new spending, mostly on defense, border security, and immigration. To help pay for all this, the bill includes 1.7 trillion in savings by making it harder to qualify for programs like Medicaid, food stamps, and student loan forgiveness. Even after those savings, the total cost adds up to a $2.4 trillion increase in the federal deficit. That means the government will be borrowing even more money. Some experts worry that the savings will be hard to actually put in place since cutting benefits is often unpopular. The bottom line, if this bill becomes law as it is, it would make the U.S. debt problem even worse. This chart shows how the U.S. government has been spending more money than it earns, which is called a budget deficit. Even before COVID-19, the government was running a deficit of about 3% of the country's income, or GDP. When the pandemic hit in 2020, that deficit got much worse, dropping to nearly 16% because of emergency spending. Things have improved since then, but we're still seeing large deficits, despite low unemployment and a strong economy. Normally, that's when the government should be saving money, not borrowing more. If this trend continues, it could lead to higher interest rates in the future. That would make things like loans, mortgages, and investments more expensive for everyone. This chart helps explains why the national debt keeps growing and why today's policies aren't solving the issue. This chart, called Debt's Silent Price Tag is Growing, shows how much the US government is paying in interest on its debt compared to the size of the economy from 1973 to 2035. For many years, the government spent about 2 to 3% of the economy on interest payments. There was a drop in the early 2000s when the interest rates were low and borrowing wasn't as high. But starting around 2020, interest costs began to rise quickly. By 2025, they are expected to be over 3% and could hit almost 4.5% by 2035, higher than any time in recent history. This increase is a big concern. More and more tax money will go toward paying interest instead of being used for things like schools, roads, or new technology. That makes it harder for the country to grow and improve. To keep up, the government might have to raise taxes or borrow even more money, which could slow down the economy. On top of that, if investors start to worry about the US debt, they might ask for even higher interest rates, which would make the problem worse. The most serious issue is that the government will have less room to deal with emergencies like a war, a disaster, or a recession. Over time, rising interest payments can quietly weaken the economy and make the country less prepared for the future. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please let me know.